Hi, I'm Kenda, and I'm one of the founding partners of Finn Real Estate Group in Los Cabos, Mexico. Well, I talk to buyers every day who are looking for their dream home in Cabo. I swear my job must be like the most amazing job on the planet. Every day I get to help people find their dream homes in Cabo, and it's amazing because life in Cabo has a healing and reviving effect on people. Families can spend more quality time with each other, and the healthy lifestyle here can remedy a whole host of ailments. Well, buyers who are just beginning their search to discover the perfect property feel very excited typically, but they're also usually a little scared because they don't know exactly what to expect. I remember feeling that exact same way. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm an expert now, but buying property in Cabo is difficult, and it's very different than buying property in the United States or in Canada. It can be really, really confusing. So, knowing some of the main differences that exist could save you from making assumptions that could make that process even more stressful than it needs to be. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that you need to know to help you be prepared for the purchasing process. I'm actually even going to throw in a bonus at the end. So technically there are 6, but 5 sounded better to me. So I'm saying 5. Number 1, the first thing you need to know is that Cabo is a cash market. I say this in almost every video that I make, but it still comes as a real surprise to people. What do I mean when I say Cabo's a cash market? Well, I mean that most property is purchased without a mortgage or a loan. Now, where I'm from in the United States, it's very rare to meet a person who does not have a mortgage or 2 on their property. But here, it's really rare to meet a person who does. There are just a handful of mortgage companies that will carry loans for US citizens here in Cabo. The one I trust the most is called Moxie Mortgage. I think they have a good product, but you should also know that it isn't cheap. Their interest rates are very high, potentially around 10%, and having a mortgage is also going to greatly increase your closing costs, taking them from between 4 and 6% of the purchase price to around 8 or 9%. And even if you do qualify for this mortgage, they're only going to loan you about 60% of the purchase price, so you still really need to have cash on hand. So whether you're buying a condo that's $300,000 or a beachfront estate that's $30 million, make sure your funds are liquid and ready to transfer into escrow. And speaking of escrow, this takes us to our number 2 thing that you should understand. Number 2, we use a neutral third-party escrow account to hold all monies while you're waiting to close on your new property. An escrow account is an account where you wire your money to be held throughout the entire closing process. The escrow company charges the buyer a fee between $650 and $750 to manage the process and manage and process the funds. Every agreement is unique and different, but in general, once you have a signed offer to purchase your property, you'll have about 3 business days to make an initial deposit into your escrow account. Generally, your initial deposit is a refundable amount of around $10,000 plus the fee that the escrow company charges, which is non-refundable. Once you wire your initial deposit, you begin a due diligence period, which typically will last between 7 and 10 days, depending on your personal requirements. During this time, all parties will sign an escrow agreement. Now, this escrow agreement is important, and it keeps you, the seller, and the escrow company safe by clearly defining how all funds will be held, the conditions for reimbursement, and how and to whom they will be dispersed at closing. After you have satisfied all of your due diligence requirements, you will make your second deposit into this very same escrow account. Now, when you make this second deposit, this is a signal that all conditions have been satisfied and that your funds, then you need to know they become non-refundable. So at that point, the closing process will begin. That may or may not sound different to you from where you are and what you're used to, but here's where it's going to feel odd. You won't know the exact amount of your final deposit until a few days before closing. You'll usually be provided with an estimate, but you'll have to wait until you know the exact amount due prior to sending your final payment. This is mostly because the peso to dollar conversion rate changes daily, so it's really impossible to predict what the exchange rate will be until we're very close to the finish line. I have to tell you, this one drives some people crazy, but it's just one of those things. You have to put on your patience helmet. And the patience helmet brings us to number 3. The number 1 thing you need to know, or number 3 thing you need to know, is that you are buying in Mexico. Yep, that's it. You're buying in Mexico. I know, I'm going to sound terrible, but you cannot believe the number of times I hear the phrase, well, in Canada, we do it this way, or that would never fly in the United States. But you know what? You're right. But you're not buying in the United States, you're buying in Mexico. The primary language here is Spanish, and the primary currency is the peso. You don't have to be fluent in Spanish to buy or live here, but you do need to work with a brokerage that is. Your contract will be in both English and Spanish, but if there's any question or litigation related to the contract, the Spanish version wins. You're in Mexico. So make sure that your agent and their staff have a solid grasp of the language and understand the legal verbiage required by Mexican law. So that takes us to number 4. If you are not a Mexican citizen and you purchase property in Cabo, you're going to be purchasing it through something called a fideicomiso. I've recorded other videos about the fideicomiso and written blogs about it too. So if you want to understand it better, check that out. But the main idea is that pretty much every house you see in Cabo that is owned by a foreigner, meaning a non-Mexican citizen, is held in a trust called a fideicomiso. This one in particular feels really scary to people. Don't worry, nobody's coming to take your land and the property is yours into perpetuity. Just get used to hearing that word, because if you're buying property in Cabo, you're going to hear it a lot. Number 5, in most cases, the commissions are all paid by the seller. When buyers are looking for a house, they usually recognize that they need to work with a realtor to get them in to see different properties. However, I see 2 unique cases where buyers really do themselves a disservice by not working with an agent. First of all, when they try to find an off-market house or an off-market lot to buy on their own. They think for some reason that they can get a better deal if they don't involve a realtor. Even though it doesn't cost them anything, they want to do it on their own. In my experience, they usually don't get that much of a better deal, and in the end, they regret their decision because they often run into problems in the closing process. These problems cost them time, stress, and often a lot more money than they would have even been perceiving to have saved in the immediate future. So I see it all the time, and I just sadly shake my head. If you've ever heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know, well, that could never be truer than when buying property in a foreign country. If you do take the risk and try to go on your own, you absolutely must hire a lawyer who is bilingual and very familiar with the real estate transaction. And I mean a Mexican lawyer. The second case where I see buyers doing themselves a disservice by not using their own agent is when they go to a development and buy a pre-construction property directly from the developer. Many developments have on-site sales reps to help you make the purchase. But what they do not realize is that agent works for, is paid by, and represents the best interests of the developer. The sales rep, who may not even be a licensed real estate agent, may be very good at making you think that they're your friend and they're trying hard to get that exception made for you. But at the end of the day, that salesperson works directly for the developer, not for you. So when buying a property, you should always have a buyer's agent who represents you. It costs you nothing extra, and it can save you so much time, money, and peace of mind. So here's your bonus round. Just an FYI, it takes around 90 days from the time you make your non-refundable deposit to close on properties in Cabo. The process is much slower here than you might be used to, so it's important that you plan ahead. So if you have dreams of hosting an epic family reunion in your oceanfront villa this summer, you should be ready to buy really soon. And call me. I love family reunions. Well, this is Kenda with Finn Real Estate Group, and my team and I would just love to help you find your dream property if you're looking. Please like and subscribe to my channel for future videos, and ciao. Thanks for watching.